Welcome to our International Labor Session of the Rainbow Push Convention. We have a powerful labor panel for you today, looking at various sectors of labor. We open with our moderator, Mrs. Cleola Brown, who is the president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. On the panel, we have Randi Weingarten, president of the American Federation of Teachers. We're going to look at what's happening in education and what is labor saying that we should be doing in the midst of this pandemic. We have Mr. Lee Saunders, president of AFSCME, American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, really looking at our government employees and where we are and what it is they are fighting for. And then the final panelist is Mr. Stuart Applebaum, president of the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. And so many of them have been what I consider to be, and all of us, most of us consider to be first responders. They're the frontline workers. So you're going to hear from them. Hope you enjoyed this labor session. You need to become a member of Rainbow Push. Join us today, right now. All you have to do is go to rainbowpush.org and take out a membership. It's $35 a year, except for seniors, those who are 65 and older, it's $15 a year. And for students, it's $15 a year. Pushing for you is what we do absolutely best. Labor has been our partner throughout our journey in the civil rights movement.
I have the pleasure this evening of being the moderator to the most dynamic panel that you could ever ask for from labor. I want to start this evening with my good sister, leader, Randi Weingarten, who's the president of the American Federation of Teachers, a troublemaker personified. And then I will go to our brother Lee Saunders, and then I will go to our brother Stuart Applebaum, who I will properly introduce at the time that they are about to speak. Let me say this. I'd like to start by just referencing a piece, Randi, that you did during your convention. And it was amazing how you talked about at your convention piece. You said that, and this is almost a year ago, you said that at the height of the pandemic, 30 million children relied on school meals because many families were unable to afford the cost of groceries. 20% of the country, 43 million, that were that were deep in federal student loans, those loans are about to default. You talked a whole lot about nearly 1 million people who worked in schools and colleges and had already lost their jobs in the recession, and that another 1.4 million educators would lose their jobs if the Senate denied states, the schools, the funds that they needed for essential services. I don't know what lens you were looking through, but all of your predictions were right on point. And you talked too about the fact that most of those kids in the schools were dependent on the meals that they received there at school. I am, first of all, asking you, how are the teachers in this country? And is the picture a little bit better?
Thank you so much for having us, Clay, and doing this. And, you know, Rainbow Push is the epitome of kind of the labor community partnership, where when labor and community stands together, we actually can make things happen for working people, for people who are marginalized, for people who are oppressed, for people who are vulnerable in the United States. And COVID did more than probably anything I know in modern times to show the inequity in this country on whether it's healthcare, whether it's schooling, whether it's jobs, whether it's just general, how do you get a better life? What you were quoting from is that at the snapshot at last summer, where people were and where was the health of the nation, and you saw a huge through line or a huge line between those who were wealthy and those who were not. And you know, and many of us, Lee, Stuart, myself, we kind of live in that space of fighting for and serving those who do not have but being representative of people who are the working poor to the working middle class, who are fighting not only for their own families and the services that we deliver, but fighting for communities.
Mhm.
And so to answer your question, teachers are happy to be back in the K-12 teachers are happy to be back in school. They've always wanted to be in person. And we said to the last administration, who did not listen, that what we needed was the safety protocols and the resources to be back in school, because we knew that students and communities needed to be in school. We've always known that, but now, parents and communities see how being in school helps to create and center community life.
Mhm.
And so whether it's for academics, emotional, social, we knew that that was important. So as the last administration doesn't listen, this administration did, and they got the vaccines out, which were the big game changers. So as we're leaving the end of the school year, virtually all the schools are open for in-school learning. And you see in that moment a lot of joy, and you also see a lot of the social services that schools were doing, including having Wi-Fi, including making sure that kids are fed. But there's still a lot of people that we have to convince that schools can be safe and welcoming places for all of our kids, both emotionally and physically. And we have to do that not only about COVID, but we have to do that about the real racial reckoning that we're going through, and so on and so on. How are the teachers though? They are stressed and spent, because they have gone through turning on a dime to be remote, then trying to figure out what to do this year, sometimes being hybrid, sometimes being remote, sometimes being full-time, with before President Biden having no clear, concise guidance and judgment or guidance. And the bottom line is getting criticized every other day by the right wing, who refused to do anything during the Trump administration, but is attempting to divert the lack of good response from Trump onto the shoulders of the very same people who have really been trying to engage kids. So last thing I'll say is RAND report last week said 76% of teachers reported frequent job-related stress during the pandemic, compared to about 40% of other working adults. 27% of teachers have symptoms of depression, compared to 10% of other adults. 25% of teachers are saying that they're likely to leave at the end of the year. They want what kids need, but we have seen, both in terms of our nurses that we represent, our public service providers that we represent, as well as the educators that we represent, they've wanted to do the work that they had to do for the communities we serve, but they are really, really, really spent right now.
Oh my God. When the pandemic hit from the very beginning, thank you for that, Randy. The transparency that came over the country when children in neighborhoods of Black and brown folk didn't know what to do, so they sat there because their parents didn't know what to do. No broadband in the community, and getting their Wi-Fi from places that were away from home that they were afraid to go to now because the pandemic was out there so broadly. Trying to comply with what was being required, and then states not being real clear about how this new revision was going to work. But I tell you what, the teachers in the United States pulled together, whether it was with AFT or any other teaching organization, NEA or any of the others. It was exemplary to see how much of their personal self they gave to make sure that the children of this country were fine, that they were going to be educated in a safe way, and that they were being understood for their apprehension about getting back into the real swing of things. We have to salute them too, those that stuck to it and did well by the end of that school session that is now starting to roll down for just about everyone. So it's leadership like yours that helped to make us feel safe when bad things happen. So Randy, thank you for that.
Let me just say one more thing, Clay, and then I'm going to stop. It's the the safe conditions, which is what the labor movement fights for all the time. It's the safe conditions that created the vehicle back into school. It's the safe conditions, it's the fight for safety, it's a fight for vaccines, it's a fight for those kind of workplaces. That's what helped America. And that's who we are as a labor movement. That's who we've always been as a labor movement. That's who we are as a labor movement right now. Fighting for the conditions that the people we represent and the people we serve need. And I'm just grateful that the Biden administration and Joe Biden himself understood the need for those resources and the need for the safety protocols. And you see what the results have been since.
Thank you for that, Portia. Thank you so much. Now, Lee, as the president of the largest trade union of public employees in the United States, I've heard you say that with such pride from time to time, as you should. Your AFSCME members were leaders in the fight for the passage of the American Rescue Plan Act. One of the safety nets, as Randy was referring to, that was included in the plan speaks to rebuilding America's crumbling infrastructure. Now, the way they've been using the word infrastructure around talking about all the plans and whatever, people see bridges, they see roads, they don't see a lot of the other stuff. What does this mean for stabilizing the lives of your members who represent so many on the front lines and whose work was essential in the survival for so many others? Is America's rescue plan enough to balance the scales between the haves and the have-nots? And how do we help to ensure that people really understand what that infrastructure piece means, and certainly as it relates to the future of labor?
Well, thanks for the question, Clay. Let me first start off by giving a shout out to Reverend Jackson and to our friends at Operation Push for doing what all of us need to do, coming together, working very closely together to improve the lives of those that we are concerned about, working families in our communities across the country. And that's important to say, I believe. The next thing that I'd like to do is I'll tell you a little story. And this is very true. I mean, you've got Stuart Applebaum here. You just heard from Randy Weingarten. Anytime that I'm outside of my home and I'm talking to a worker, whether they are in a grocery store, whether they're a teacher or a cafeteria worker, a retail worker, the postal service, the postman or postwoman, you know what I tell them? I say thank you. I say thank you every
That's
single day to them because they went beyond the call of duty in this terrible, terrible time that we've had with this pandemic, continuing to work, continuing to provide essential services, whatever that work might be, risking their lives, risking their families' lives because they didn't have the proper equipment to help themselves not get the virus. I can tell you a story with a hospital worker in Oregon who was an AFSCME member, and he was going to work every day with and didn't have the proper PPE, proper equipment. And he was a young man in his mid-30s. And he decided one day when he was at work that he was going to visit an attorney after leaving work, and he was going to prepare a will because he didn't think that he was going to make it. And he was so concerned about bringing something home, bringing that virus home to his family that he stayed in one room of that house and didn't leave. I mean, and Randy can tell stories like this, Stuart can tell stories like this. This is what happened to working people all across the country. Now, to answer more specifically your question, AFSCME is a union representing 1.4 million public service workers in the public sector and in the nonprofit sector, and even in the private sector, but representing and doing public services, essential public services for our communities across the country. So you're talking about EMTs, you're talking about sanitation workers, you're talking about cafeteria workers, school bus drivers, every classification within the public service you can think about, we represent for the most part. And those folks went beyond the call of duty during this pandemic, and they continue to go beyond the call of duty. providing those essential services to their community. They didn't waver,
That's
they
right.
didn't stop, they continued those services regardless of the challenges that confronted them every single day. We saw that. AFSCME saw that. Everyone saw that.
Mhm.
And we also understood that we needed to provide them as much help as we possibly could provide. So all of us together, not just AFSCME, but the entire labor movement and our partners across the country, we pushed night and day, 24 hours a day for that rescue plan that would provide support and help to millions of workers across the country. I think Randy and I probably kept an open line on our phones, but we never hung up. I mean, we were talking so much about this issue and what we needed to do. All of us collectively were involved in that effort. And we fought for the rescue plan night and day.
Mhm.
And there were times when it was pretty disheartening because the Republicans in the Senate didn't want to budge on supporting the work that all of our members collectively were doing every single day. But we kept on pushing, we kept on fighting, we kept on making our voices heard. And finally, with the change of administration and with the Senate wins in Georgia, we were able to move the rescue plan, which provided billions of dollars to our communities across the country, okay, to support working families.
Mhm.
Labor, along with our friends, did that with the support, obviously, of our friends in elected positions. But we did that. We should be real proud of it. And we gave that lifeline to our members and working families in our communities across the country. And we were successful. I mean, you just look at all the things that are in that rescue plan that people are taking advantage of right now. It was the right thing to do, and labor led the way in doing it. But let me just say this, our work is not done. Our work is never done. And we've got a number of plans, a family plan, the jobs plan, improvements in infrastructure. And when I talk about improvements in infrastructure, we aren't just talking about roads and bridges, but we're talking about schools.
That's right.
We're talking about childcare. We're talking about elder care, where we can provide for those who are in need. And we've got to expand that scope and expand the definition of infrastructure to include those kinds of things that we normally don't put in an infrastructure package, but it is a part
That's right.
of our country's infrastructure. So we're continuing to push that. And we're having the same kinds of issues that we had with the rescue plan, with those who don't want to get off the dime and don't want to do the right thing. And we just got to continue to organize and mobilize and educate and make our voices heard every single day. That's what we do best. I mean, that's what labor does best. That's what our allies, that's what we all do best. I mean, we organize every single day within our unions and within our communities to get the job done. And we've got to continue to do that to move this country forward. And it's not going to be easy.
No.
It's going to be hard. But we're committed to it. We're committed to it. Our members are committed to it. Our allies are committed to it. And we believe our friends on the Hill are committed to it. And we're just going to have to continue to push that envelope every single day. And that's where we are, but that's who we are. And that's what we're all about.
As always, you lay the picture plain and clear so that all of the mishmash that we hear in the news, all of the confusing messages that get said and sent to folks all across the country so that they're so confused, they would think that the folks would not band together and act. You gave a good, clear overview of what it is that we're going after. And that's every single person that lives in every single home can put their hands on one piece of what you described to make it personal, to be engaged in the fight that you were describing. So we thank AFSCME. We thank you for your leadership and all that you do. I'm going to bring you back at the end to give us a charge to going forward. But before we do that, I want to go to Stuart Applebaum, who just a few short months ago, president of RWDSU, a few short months ago, the nation watched as workers in the Amazon plants in Bessemer, Alabama. Most folks didn't even know where Bessemer, Alabama was, Stuart. They fought so hard to organize a union at the Amazon plant. And they did it under pressure and duress that they never thought would exist at Amazon, the big player, the exemplary employer on TV. Now, a major factor in that fight was how the company was handling COVID-19 and how the workers were being treated. And even though the election is over, please help us to understand. Right now, what is the update as to the status of our brothers and sisters at that plant and what the plans are to move this fight to the next level? Why is that so important that just because the election is over, that's not the end of the game? Just as Lee was saying, our work is not done. And that's exactly what you've been saying about those workers in Bessemer. So would you please do that for us?
First of all, I want to thank you, Clay. And I also want to tell everybody how thrilled I am to have the opportunity to be with you this evening and to be able to express the great respect I have for Rainbow Push and for Reverend Jackson. It's a real honor to be able to participate this evening. Amazon got a lot of attention, and that's the way it should be, because Amazon is transforming industry after industry all over the world, from e-commerce to technology to logistics to healthcare, to name just a few. Amazon has become a dominant force in our economy. It's the second largest employer in the United States, soon expected to become the largest employer in our country. And its business model is based on paying little or no taxes, feasting on public subsidies, and dehumanizing and mistreating its employees. Worker after worker told us how they felt like robots being managed by other robots. They get their assignments from an algorithm. They get disciplined and fired by a text message. And every motion they make is being monitored and recorded. The working conditions are terrible. People get injured and even die all the time. And one study showed in Great Britain that there were 600 ambulance calls to Amazon facilities within a 3-year period. People complain about the mental stress because they are expected to keep up with an unattainable pace. There have been calls to suicide prevention centers from Amazon facilities. And what is happening at Amazon cannot be ignored, because the fight with Amazon is not just about one employer, but given Amazon's dominance, it's really about the future of work and how workers are going to be treated and whether or not their basic humanity is going to be respected. This campaign seized the moment. It reflected the public's concern about the overbearing power of big tech corporations in general and Amazon in particular. It was about the skyrocketing levels of inequality, which were exacerbated by the pandemic and which were personified by the staggering personal wealth of Jeff Bezos, the wealthiest person since creation. It was about the ongoing denial of racial justice in the United States, including in the workplace. It was about the failure of corporate America to prioritize the health and safety of its workers, especially during a deadly pandemic. It was about the unregulated technologies that Amazon is using to monitor every movement and motion of its workers. And it was about the lack of dignity, respect, and just treatment that too many Americans endure at work. And it was about how a powerful corporation would stop at nothing and would readily spend millions of dollars to deny their workers a voice, even subjecting them to anti-union propaganda and misinformation in the company's restrooms. The people should not misread the results of the vote in Bessemer. Workers were not saying that they were satisfied with the way Amazon was treating them. Instead, the vote was about the employers' interference and intimidation to make people afraid to vote for the union. We are not going away. We're going to stay engaged. We have no choice. It's about much more than this one company. It's really about the future of work. We're in Bessemer, the organizing committee is strong, and we expect that there is going to be another election. And this time, an election that will hopefully respect the workers' right to decide on their own
That's right.
whether or not they want a union. It's the workers' choice. It is not the employer's choice.
Wow, absolutely, Stuart. Absolutely.
Well, I would just say
I'm
that
just giving Stuart a high five.
Okay.
I love you,
both
Randy.
of us are.
I love you, Lee, and Clay as well.
Both of us support his, whenever they become members, and they will, of RWDSU, we are behind him 100%.
Oh my God. Yes.
Thank
Yes. Yes. I listen to the three of you in such awe because it's not usual that the magnitude of these powerful unions are pulled together in a voice all at one time. And it's because it's Rainbow Push and Reverend Jackson.
Right.
That you have these folks tonight speaking with us. And I just want to say before Lee closes us out and before Randy gets her piece in, that it's hard for me to moderate this piece because there's so much respect for the work that each of you did through our most difficult time that we've ever experienced. Randy going down to George Floyd Square, supporting a teacher who was holding court and protecting the workers in that area with the bodies of the people of the neighborhood, the teachers coming in to help and support that. That's real stuff. That's not stuff that you put on for show or whatever. That's real stuff. And Stuart doing down in Bessemer what everybody else was afraid to do and came out after the vote and gave one of the strongest presentations ever. And Lee Saunders, whose organization has been doing things ever since the sanitation workers strike, but then given the courage to those who had to do the things during the pandemic that most folks would not have wanted to do. The craziness that went on with bus drivers, the insults that went on in grocery stores, the kind of exposures that the members of AFSCME had. But he stood solid on his ground, supporting his workers every step of the way. And collectively, these three international presidents who pushed this present administration to understand that workers come first. It's because of a Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push organization that you're getting these words firsthand this evening. I am absolutely thrilled to sit and listen to the remarks of all of you. But as Lee closes us out, after Randy has her say, if you were just saying a high five, Okay, but I'd like for each of you to please say something, Randy and Stuart, and then Lee, if you would, to close us out with the charge for what we should be doing to get to where we need to be, in your own words, for the group that you just got done talking about. From the heart, no script, because y'all don't use a script anyway. I don't see why people think that you would. Randy, what is your,
Look, we, and Lee said this earlier, we are at an inflection point of this country. The country needs a lot of work to make it a just place for all. But we are built on a democracy that virtually no one else has in the world.
Mhm,
And we have a moment that we could lose that.
that's
And so this is the moment that as we fight for justice, and Lee said this before, there were many days as we were fighting for the HEROES Act that we didn't know whether it was going to happen or not. There were many days as we were fighting for Joe Biden's election, we didn't know what was going to happen or not at the same exact time as COVID was wreaking havoc.
mhm.
And at the same exact time as you had things like the murder of George Floyd. But here we are, a year later, with a child tax credit going out to people all across America. Here we are with the resources that we got to help services get stood up, to help have the schools reopen, to make sure that people have something that they need. It's not perfect. America is imperfect. But when we fight as community, this is
Mm.
what Rainbow Push has done every single moment under Reverend Jackson. When we fight as community and labor together for justice and for opportunity and the ability to thrive, which is the credo of the labor movement, then we see success. It's not a straight line. It takes that fight, but it requires us to work together like never before to not only save and preserve our democracy, but have a better country that helps see the good and the hope and the opportunity and the life in everyone.
Mm, mm. Thank you, Randy. Stuart?
Randy, that was so really well said.
Mm,
That what I really want to say right now is amen. I also want to focus though on something else. At the beginning of the pandemic, people would say we're all in this together. Well, that was never true. It was the essential workers that allowed the rest of society to survive. And most of them were people of color, and many of them were immigrants who kept going to work every day, regardless of their documentation status. And it was because of them that we are all able to look at the end of the pandemic. And we would often say, thank you to these people, to the grocery workers, to the food processing workers, to Randy's members and Lee's members, to the transportation workers. But saying thank you is not enough. People didn't need more thank yous. What they really need is higher wages and better benefits. And what we all need to do is understand the inequities that were highlighted in our society during the pandemic, and together join, together make the change in our society that treats all people, no matter what they do or who they are or what language they speak or what they believe in, with the justice and dignity and respect they deserve. If there is a lesson that comes out of this pandemic, it's that every single person is entitled to justice. And as we all know, that is only going to happen if people remain engaged and join together and fight to make a country and a world that works for all of us.
Wow. Wow. Come on, Lee.
I obviously will say a second amen to what Randy and Stuart have said. Let me just say this, and I know that Randy and Stuart agree with this, along with our allies within labor and our allies outside of labor, that we've been able to do a lot, but we've got a whole lot more to do.
Yes.
And we cannot let our guards down at all. This is the time, this is the moment for all of us to come together in support of working families in our communities across the country. Just look at the challenges that are confronting us. I mean, you look at the corporations who aren't paying taxes. They want more and more money at the expense of those who are trying to play by the rules every single day, trying to put food on the table, send their kids to school. Those things are under attack, okay? I mean, you look at the fact that it's harder and harder for us to organize workers in unions. We need to strengthen our labor laws in this country, and we're doing just that with the PRO Act that's being considered on Capitol Hill, and the Public PRO Act, which covers public service workers, which will be considered on the Hill. This is the first time in many, many years where the overwhelming majority of Americans believe that worker representation, having unions, is extremely important. Because why? It provides that seat at the table for workers, a collective seat at the table. So they can talk about better wages and better benefits. They can talk about improving their communities, safety and health issues, all of those kinds of things. All of us, Rainbow Push and all of us, have got to come together, not 2 weeks out of the year, but come together every single day and develop a strategy and develop a plan and implement that strategy and plan every single day, and pressure and fight and organize and mobilize and educate our communities so we can get the job done. We can do that. We really can do that. I mean, this is just an example of what we've been able to do, what we've been talking about today. We can do more if we're together. And we can't get discouraged. We can't give up. We can't say that nothing matters. It does. And then there's one last piece that I want to talk about, and that's an attack on our democracy. And Randy has been very vocal with this, as far as voting rights. AFSCME and all of labor stand united, and our allies and partners stand united in saying, hell no, you are not going to take away our basic freedoms. You are not going to steal democracy away from us. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. And collectively, we've got to stop it, and collectively, we can't stop it. So Rainbow Push, labor, our allies, let's get the job done. Let's join hands, let's fight like hell, and let's improve the status of working people in our communities across the country. That's who we are. It's our job to do just that, and we will.
Oh, yes. Oh my God.
Amen, Reverend Applebaum or Rabbi Applebaum and Reverend Saunders.
And all of this because of our wonderful, wonderful Reverend Jesse Jackson, always saying, I can see the passion, but I want to know where that pathway is. Tonight, you were given the pathway through the actions that have taken place and the charge for where we need to go next to make sure that all of us are okay. Thank you, Lee Saunders. Thank you, President Randy Weingarten. Thank you, President Stuart Applebaum. You guys are amazing. It is my pleasure to have been chosen to moderate this panel tonight. I'm Cleola Brown. I'm the Civil Rights Director for the AFL-CIO and the President of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. And thank you from the best place in our hearts and minds, Reverend Jackson, for always having labor on your convention agenda. Thank you everyone for watching, and good evening.
for 2021, we're excited to get more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. Now, if you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those who are incarcerated, you can do so. If you're interested in impacting public policies that benefit education and businesses with social economic solutions, you can do that as well. You can become a policymaker by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now. Now, if you believe in the scholarships that we've given to thousands of students each year, you can help us out. We've awarded more than $10 million in scholarships year to date. Now, you can help young people achieve a higher education by becoming a member of Rainbow Push right now for the annual fee of only $35. And if you're a student or a senior, it's only $15. You can help us make a difference in the lives of millions. Now, if you watch us every week, or if you listen to us on the radio, or if you're viewing on social media, we need you to become a member. And how do you become a member? It's simple. Visit us at rainbowpush.org and press join. Maybe you'd like to support the work of Push. If so, it's really simple. You can do so by texting the word PUSH, that's P-U-S-H, to 41444 on your cell phone, and you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving, or you can call us at 773-256-2775 or go to rainbowpush.org and push donate. So whenever you want to support, you can do it from anywhere. So keep pushing, because we're going to keep pushing for you and keep hope alive.